Firstly, welcome. We'll be kicking off in a couple of minutes. It's important that we wait for a few others to join us. If you feel the need for someone in your family, colleague, friend, whatever it might be, my suggestion is please do feel free to invite them, share this video. And if you know someone that needs help with money, they're sort of stuck, they're really hitting roadblock, by all means reach out to them. I'd love to know
we'll be kicking off in a couple of minutes. It's important that we wait for a few others to join us. If you feel the need for someone in your family, colleague, friend, whatever it might be, my suggestion.
Sorry?
You're wrong. I just need to get this off for you. Sounds off. There you go. You can just see everybody interact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're still going.
Okay, we might do some work on that in the future, I think. So yeah, I guess my question to you is this evening, what do you want to get from this piece? Next 45, 50 minutes are going to be dedicated to you. I'd love to be able to punch into the screen for me. It's just, what is this about? What do you need to address? What do you need help with? I can certainly fire out, a whole stack of ideas, solutions, but more specifically, I want to make sure they land in the right place. So what do you need help with? What are you trying to achieve tonight? What are you hoping to take away from the piece this evening? Please share this video, as I said before. The mission of this, look, as probably many of you know, property has been very, very kind to me, and we'll go into this a bit more elaborately as the night unfolds. But, money is one of those beautiful things that when you work at it, it becomes easier. So the mission of tonight, the purpose of you and I working together is to really help you get a leg up on money. It's to help you understand, become sophisticated, and to really help you acknowledge that money is one of those key things of your life that once you've nailed it, you are in a very, very different place. No longer do you seem to struggle. You have this anxiety around money. You open envelopes with concern and disdain. You have this sense of freedom. You become good at the subject of this, and it becomes a sport. It becomes something you're really, really good at. So, as a kid, I want to just remind you that, I was never good at anything. And, when you think about children or the gene pool, the lucky gene pool, some people, end up on their feet. They really are the gold standard. I did not have a skill set like that. And I'll give you an example. Just the other day, I was sharing some lunch with a friend of mine, Steve, and lovely guy, very successful fellow. And talk about the lucky gene pool. His son, 19, is 6'10", has done a year and a half now at the Australian Institute of Sport, done the IMG program, which apparently in basketball is the elite, and now goes to Harvard starting as of next Wednesday. Say, gee, he's very lucky. I can't believe this guy's fortune, and he's barely even got life started. He's 19 years of age. But for me, I never had any of those skills. I didn't have, a basketball height. I didn't have, an acumen for anything at school. I hated school, very much a C-grade student, left at 16. I didn't have the gold standard in anything. I had no sport. I had no experience, no expertise in any field. When it came to the subject of money, I guess I sort of recognized it as being something that if you really plug into it, if you make a decision to excel in money, it's one of those things you can work at and become incredibly good at it. You're like an A-grade player. So, I want to remind you that that's one of the things I would suggest that you do. Is, I looked at money and thought to myself, this is not about, me having a go or kicking tires. I'm going to nail this. And I really want you to own that. Think about tonight, what would life look like if you don't get this right? Does it mean that, this madness just perpetuates? That, you tear out of the house on Monday morning, angry, upset, frustrated, disillusioned? Or would it mean more to you this evening to say, fuck it, I'm really going to nail it. I'm going to get into the layers. I'm going to do what the greats have done. And I just want you to recognize that when you make those choices, those decisions, it's funny how life becomes quite fruitful. You can turn finances around. And I can promise you this, if I can, you can. And gone are the days where I'd sit there and just scratch my head and think, how can I afford to pay off 11 grand credit card debt on that particular loan, on that particular card, and have another 8 grand on this card? I mean, I was buried, I was dying from debt. And I want you to be able to, call it now and say, I am going to own this. I don't care if it's the last fucking thing I do on this earth. I'm going to nail the subject of money. Because that visceral determination was exactly where I was at also. And I think that's what's required to really address this head on and be a pro in the world of affluence. So, when you think about this, I also do say to you, I want you to question. I see a lot of frivolous waste today. And this means not just in terms of dollars and cents. I see people quite confused about how they live. I have very, very strong views about, if you're going to be a pro in the subject of money, it means that you learn from the pros. You walk in that path. And this is no pitch, but I've certainly learned this myself, following mentors, being around, rubbing shoulders with very, very wealthy, successful people over my time. And I literally modeled every fucking thing they did, from the way that they walked, talked, the way they addressed themselves in business, the way they carried themselves, integrity, all that. I just modeled exactly how they were. So when I say that, I want you to think carefully. I see a lot of people today being frivolous in their waste, and this means, simply put, they have an idea of lifestyle, and I'm going to try and do my best to explain this. But instead of them being smart about money, I see them spinning wheels. Let me explain. I've never really understood FIFO, fly in, fly out. That to me has always been confusing. I don't really feel the need to separate myself from my family, my partner, husband, wife, whatever that may be, and then live an external diverse life for 22 days of the month and expect to live a normalized life for about 8 or 9. I find that very dysfunctional. Now, no judgment. I see a lot of people are out there to try and pursue this thing called keeping up with the Joneses. It's upon them. They want to make money. They want to be in the right place, right postcode. Kids going to private schools, a fucking car, and smelling the right way. And it's kind of like this happy-go-lucky sort of, falsified marriage. We look happy on the outside, but we're dying inside. And I ask you the question, because I really want you to think about this carefully. If those traits, if any of those elements are you, would it make sense that you may perhaps moderate your lifestyle, dilute the lifestyle, but then also have more time to spend with your family and be present, be a great parent, great father, great mother? I don't see the purpose or the sense in this madness of working hard, being away from a family, all in aid of keeping up with the Joneses. And I want you to question that. Money has been an incredibly forgiving prospect for me. I've got a big bug in here and it's driving me nuts. You can't see it, but I can. But it's been incredibly forgiving. It's allowed me to live an incredibly rich and luxurious life, but I'm talking in terms of time and quality of experience. You need to be able to be at school pick up and drop off every single day, every sports day, the only dad around at canteen time. All those silly little nuances add up to be something quite significant. And I'm asking you to question the thought, Mark, if I was to be conscious about my decisions and step back from my job, I don't need a lot of money. I'm questioning the system. I'm questioning the fucking matrix. Do I need to be like that? Do I need to follow the system and be tax cattle? Or can my wife and I step back a little bit, homeschool our children, live a better life on less money? Because I think that's the conversation that's not being had today. We've all got this idea, we're caught in the vortex, let's just charge on, and 60 hours a week should be the absolute minimum. If you're a business owner today, meaning you're a proprietor limited business, a PL, or a sole proprietor, you're crunching 65, 75 hours a week and risking every fucking thing you've got. And let's be clear, I'm not going to be nasty. I want to be I want to be really transparent with you. You are taking on enormous amounts of risk in doing so. You are buying a job in the hope that it may pay out one day. And I'm asking you to question that thought, to question that whole system. Is it really for you? And if it's not, and you're literally sitting there on the verge of heartbreak, maybe it's time to consider, what would life look like if I removed myself from the burbs, moved out to a semi-rural place, was self-sufficient, was almost off-grid, had children at home that I could teach? I wonder what the quality of your life would be. See, I believe that you and I get one spin of the wheel here. And if money's your thing, I'm the guy, let's plug in, let's get it done. But if you're on the fence and you're thinking, there's got to be alternative ways, I think that you need to explore that too. You need to ask yourself, how would that be, honey? What would that look like? And take 3-4 weeks, take a glass of wine with your partner and say, what would life be like if we stepped out of that position? Could we do it with less, more intelligently, and enjoy this process, enjoy the mission? So, in saying that, I just don't want you to be enslaved. I've been very, very fortunate in the system that I've used, the methodology has been such that I've been able to get in the kitchen, turn up the heat, and step out. At 46, for the last 5-6 years, it's been, pretty much, I wouldn't say easy street, but I've had the ability to be an active, conscious investor. And that means that business, commerce operates independent of me and my time. And yes, I have hands on the levers, I have hands on the wheel, but I have an enormous amount of faith in a team that steers my investment portfolio. And I'm very, very blessed for skilled people in my life. But I want you to be able to be clear about dive in, dive out. This is a season. It should not be a 40-year tenure, 50-year tenure. This should not be the oasis on the horizon, but something very real and tangible. So, any thoughts, any questions about that?
Yeah, if you're working crazy hours like a lot of people are, and living this lifestyle that you're constantly needing to fuel and feed. There's got to be something there's got to be something that we're attached to, right? There's got to be something that we don't want to let go of. What is that?
Do you think you're suggesting there's got to be, Mark, there's got to be something driving me to continue on with this madness.
Correct.
We're scared of letting go of something. I think you and I have been born scared, or born fearful of not having enough. Either we don't have enough or we are not enough. They're really two drivers, I think, in human psychology. So you think, why do people get out of bed? People should not get out of bed at 4:30 on a Monday morning and tackle the Sydney traffic. They just shouldn't. That's not normal. It's not the way we're built. But we'll do that for 60 hours and not even fucking question it. We'll hate our lives. We'll hate 80% of our lives and expect to live a wholesome, well-rounded, enjoyable, weekend for 2 of the 7. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, look, I think, yes, maybe we are on the run. Maybe we're fearful. Maybe we're being forced into the work environment. But again, that's why I asked you before. Question it. Do I need to have that constant sense of anxiety and scared and that fear around me? Or can I question the matrix and say, listen, I want to go live in a caravan, an old bus on 35 acres in the Blue Mountains. And I can do that on 48 grand a year. Here's how. I need 22 solar panels. And I ask myself, is that a good way to do it? I've had plenty of friends of mine drop out of the system. It makes sense. But again, it's got to be conscious. If you want a future for your children that revolves around the modern day, it's not an alternative route. Well, that's got to be a conscious choice too. But you can't sit on the fence, let 25 years disappear and go, what the fuck happened? Time just seems to slip through my fingers. That's not enough. That's not participating, and that doesn't serve your children or your family at all.
Exactly, and for those of us who are in, extreme amounts of debt or even marginal amounts of debt right now, you could just sit back and ask the question, okay, what got me that debt, and is that really fulfilling me?
Sure.
Is that really,
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Look, I agree with you. Is that doing it for me? Is it pushing my buttons? Where's this debt got me?
Yeah.
And make no mistake, look, there's plenty of upside to money. Like if I could explain in detail, live rich is not just copious amounts of money. It really is not. It really comes back to choice. You can do a lot with 50 mil. A lot. You change your whole fucking life. Now that curve, that bell curve, we've talked about this before. The bell curve between sort of, let's just say, a moderate amount, let's say 50 million. You've got this kind of bell curve, and I've looked at this carefully, and I've asked myself, let's just say that you and I, sitting in here somewhere, had about a 50 million net worth, right? 50 mil. I call this the bell curve. Now this kind of means that you and I are going to dedicate somewhere between about 15 years, is what I believe, about 15 solid years. Now some of us have already got to jump on that. We have a craft, a skill set, a profession, a business, an enterprise. We've got something, a franchise. There's a lot of people that are well progressed along that pathway, that timeline. It could be 4, 5, 6 years deep, 7 years deep. But let's just say you're going to dedicate about 15 years. But that 15 years to me is an incredibly fruitful, intelligent trade if I can buy the next 35.
Yeah,
Like, that makes sense. If I think about, for a moment, people do not work a 40-year career anymore, man. Those days are fucking gone. They're over their history. That's nonsense. I see 68-year-old men at the servo at 11 p.m. Do you think he wants to be there? Genuinely? Like, these glasses and you can see him. He's just no financial planning. But if I can now purchase the next 30, if I can be intelligent with that 15, and that doesn't mean 70 hours, 90 hour a week, smart, not hard. It doesn't mean you need to be enslaved to a business. And I think what's I think will capture your attention is over the next coming months, as we start to really dive into the layers, you'll see you can be incredibly wise with that time. If I pulled that out and said, what were the most effective years of the curve up for you? It would only be 5 to 7 maybe years. The rest of it was just learning the fucking basics, getting the fundamentals down, then having enough intelligence to go, let's keep practicing the fundamentals and just keep watching that net worth, that net gain each year, year in, year out. That just perpetuates on its own. But I think what I've noticed, and if you see this, you'll see it. If you see this and you look carefully, you'll notice that, big business, so let's just say that's in excess of 300 million, right? When a business is sort of, or a portfolio matures beyond 300, that curve up is a hell of a sacrifice. That time between there and there means that you're going to miss most birthdays, any school function. 50 million's a lot when it's managed well. 100 million, colossal. You don't need to work. But when you start to hit 300, 400, 500 million, like a buddy of mine in the day, he's about 450 circa. Mate, he's married, I can say this, but his marriage is really struggling. His children barely know him. But he spends a lot of time in the US, an enormous amount of time on planes going somewhere. That sacrifice between there and there, you better be careful. That's a very, very big undertaking. It's a very big task.
So you're saying, because this is obviously, that curve is a long game, isn't it? You're talking about 15 years.
Or more.
And
to sort of hit that circa 300-500 million is an enormous investment of time, energy.
it seems to me like a necessity to be able to take your eyes off the short game, which seems to just get us more and more in debt.
Sure.
The short game, I want that now, or we can do this now,
yes.
We can do this now and pay it off later, whatever.
Yes.
That seems like the real challenge here.
The real challenge, there's a couple of key things here that, looking back over a 16-year career that's been awfully, it's been incredibly fruitful to say the least, would be skills. A lot of it is skills. It's this conversation about managing the small things around your financial affairs. Tonight is really about deductible debt. That starts and ends, opens and closes with the little things. It's not like, I'm going to be a master at 100 million. You can't ever be a master of anything until you fucking master the basics. But mastering my deductible debt, how do I turn my tax bill into a credit? How do I get deductible debt? How do I do that legally? I think that's where the conversation sort of needs to be steered tonight. So jot this down, get a couple of notes. I do want you to take away a heap of stuff. Please keep punching questions through. I see a couple already. Zach, Peter, awesome. Just keep punching them. Jared, I will get to them. But as you guys sort of start to unpack tonight and start to realize, please just keep smashing stuff in there and I'll do my absolute best to get to them. So deductible debt, what is it? When you think about how you manage yourself and your finances, you really want to be able to keep your personal income low. This is going to sound odd, but go with me. Here's how the rich think. We do not pay ourselves colossal amounts of money, because when you're in your personal name, think of that as a silo. If I was to, pay myself $1 million a year, I've got no deductions on that money coming in. So I'm paying full freight. Now in Australia, that sits at about 48.7% of everything you earn. That's a lot of money. So for the $1 million I take out of the business, company, out of my portfolio and cash flow, I'm going to pay about $487,000 of that to the ATO, which is astronomical. If you think about our roadway forward and this 40-year problem we've got of the tax base shrinking, we believe that our tax rate will be somewhere around 59% by 2040. That's not very far. That's almost 2/3 of what your earnings will go to the ATO. And that's much the same for most of Europe. France, Brussels, Eastern Bloc Europe, it's about 55, 60%. So the challenge that you've got is that when you put stuff in your personal name, anything around your personal name has no deductions. It's like bullets that are hitting you directly with no defense, no shield or mechanism in between. And what we've got to do is try and help you, train you to recognize I've got to be able to move my debt and make it deductible. For example, you may have a home right now. You may have a business. Your business might be worth $2 million, $1 million, I don't know. But the debt that's on your home might be 450. We need to get that 450 refinanced under the business, so that everything now in your name sits there debt-free or close to debt-free. Think about credit cards, same is true. Mark, I've got 10 grand with ANZ, I've got 5 grand with NAB, I've got $12,000 credit limit with St. George, I've got a business banking account as well. Well, let's get all that credit card debt at 17, 18, 19.2% and put it against the business. Now the business has tax deductions, we call them the expense of the business. Now a lot of us just don't know those simple movements. But if I'm taking 19% interest and paying it off shit that I might have bought, a TV, I don't know, school shoes, school fees, 19%, and that's going through my personal name. If I earn 100 grand a year, let's do the math, $100,000 a year, I'm only getting 48,000, so I'm giving 48,000 that 100 back to the ATO. I'm left with $51,300. Of the 51 grand, I'm paying 19% using after-tax dollars. And this is what just has this downward spiral effect. People just have this convenience. We all want convenience, right? We all use Uber Eats, don't we? But the challenge with that is that we just don't realise the face cost of what that really means. I've already lost 48 grand out of 100, it went to the ATO. And now I'm paying 19% on non-deductible debt. So if there's a business, if there's a home, for goodness sakes, if there's an investment property, start assigning credit cards, cars, vehicles, maintenance, tyres, fuel to something, but don't have it go through your personal cards. We've got to start doing the small things well.
So
Does this make sense? Like you've got to start practicing. It's not enough to sit there and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's Friday night, I'm on a third beer. It all sounds good. But Monday morning rolls around, unless you and I actually do something, we action this. Unfortunately, we're on that road, we're on that pathway to destruction, financial destruction.
So you're saying that the way that I currently am paying off my debt,
Yes.
I can just move some things around and legally
Yes.
I can pay less.
Correct. And your income should actually go down. If you got that piece, instead of paying yourself 190, 160,000, whether that be by dividends, by director's fees from the business, whatever it might be, you should be pulling that down to 110, but then assigning all those non-deductible items across to a business expense. Refinance the credit cards under the business, under the investment property, for fuck's sakes. But stop everything going through your personal name. I see this one of the key ways of leakage. It's really sad. We don't have the financial education to go, shit, there is no deductions with me. It's just me. I've got nothing. I get in the car, I go to work, and I get plundered. But if I can move that away from me, if it's an investment property, if it's in a little business, in my hairdressing shop, I don't care. But it's going to have to wear that expense and keep it away from my personal name. Make sense?
And if I don't have a business or own a house, is there any option for me?
Well, you want to do a debt consolidation. Stop this sort of 3, 4, 5 credit cards. Go to one main user and say, I'm saving for a home loan. Open a bank account. What do I need? I need about 150, 175, 190, 260,000, depends where you live, as to the ratio of the deposit. But then tell them, hey, listen, I need to consolidate this debt. I've got a credit card over here I've got one over here worth 11, I've got another one over here worth 15. Just consolidate them and get a lower rate. But it changes your monthly repayments by $850, $1,150 a fucking month. And that's the waste that a lot of people are like, it's all too hard. Is it? Is it?
Isn't it such a important investment to pay down debt.
Oh, mate. And let's be clear, you know, the end game, utopia, is actually not debt-free. Because we know that there's different classes of debt. But what the conversation, the subject on foot right now, is the most dangerous type of debt. It's personal debt in your personal name, no deductions. And bullets are literally penetrating your skin. There's just nothing, there's nowhere to hide. So yeah, you are right. And again, I say it once more, it's not about being debt-free. It's about having the intelligent and I suppose a pragmatic use of debt. When measured, I use debt today. There is no way I'm going to pay full freight for this without putting in some bank debt. It makes fucking sense, because if it's got interest repayments to it, those interest repayments are a tax deduction. So why would I use cash? You know, looking at a vessel now, I had another inspection today, 7.9. But if I take 5.5 cash and put it in there and then borrow 2.5, that makes sense. Because every single year I've got mooring fees, insurance, skipper, maintenance, fucking fuel, the whole lot. I can write that 2.5 million off, and it's all deductible, as long as I'm using it legitimately for corporate uses, which I legitimately do. We take clients, bankers, we take builders on there all the time, team. So I can legitimately now start to use that as a deductible item. And it's not 100% personal use. It's probably 65 personal, 35 corporate commercial. And now the ATO is being used as a leverage point. So when you get smart, you can start to do that better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I never knew that shit. It's sort of starting out with the basics and going, oh man, I'm getting absolutely squeezed. I'm paying 19.2% interest on a credit card. I had a jet ski, brand new ute. I thought I was killing it. Paying rent with my girlfriend and this credit card eating me alive. Make sense? So it's just, I suppose, it's learning it, and it's also being able to action. It's not enough to sit there and go, yeah, I've heard that before. That's a fucking warning. That's a red flag. We've heard it before means activate, move.
And what would be your first step of action?
Well, as you said, if I don't have a business, I don't have an investment property, and I don't have a home as a home loan, I've got to consolidate that debt. Put it on one umbrella with the intent of I'm saving for a home. Give me a good rate, put it all together. If it just saves me $850, $1,100 a month, that's a nice differential.
Absolutely.
One of my objectives is to help you get to 20 grand, $20,000 worth of savings. Now we can start to do something with that. We can actually invest on a small scale and start to build that 20. Go from 20, 24, 24 and a half, and start to build that out. But it's these small little things that you and I've got to pay attention to. Because you can't be trusted with 100 million if you can't be trusted with $100. It's the way it works. So yeah, any other thoughts?
No, let's see some questions.
Cool. 6:29. Okay, so yeah, and I suppose the conversation too, we need to be careful that we keep this balanced, because I say to you, and this was true of Wednesday night, is addressing your expenses. What are the ins and outs in your home? And yes, we do want to be able to focus on, Mark, how do I get more intelligent with my finances? What do I need to do to get this debt and then make it deductible? So when I go to the account at the end of the year, I've got 38 grand with a credit card debt. How do I get $1,700 back as a tax check? Because it's sitting over there with the business, or it's sitting there in the investment property. You've got to start thinking. If you don't have the answers, that's what this is for. You get on there and say, okay, what's your thoughts? This is not financial advice. This is actually just ideas that you can actually sit, marinate in and go, I need to do something about that. I've heard this before. It's time to get moving, honey. We're wasting time here.
And as you say, if you can be wise with $100, if you can save yourself $100 and then be wise with that $100, then you're starting to make quick wins.
You are, mate. You really are. They're quick wins. And let's face it, if you're able to do it that way on scale, imagine if you could have a portfolio that's super tight. You've got investments that are earning you 8, 9.5, 11% per annum. And you're tight with it. There is no leakage. And that 11% return sits on top of your portfolio next year as future investment capital. Does that make sense? Your portfolio might be worth 20 mil or 15 mil. But if I've got an extra 11% sitting on top, next year I've got 1.7 million cash to go out there and buy. I can split that into 3 investment properties. Go borrow some more 3 times. And the portfolio goes from 8 properties to 11. That's really smart. But it's all about having these I suppose these silos are very clear, and I've got to get good at the game. I've got to get good at this as a sport. Yeah. All right, let's get some questions. I hope that's making sense. I trust that it is. It's it's important. It's valuable to recognise that there's ways of doing things well, and we want you to be an A-grade player. It's not enough to be sort of, Mark, I'm in the local soccer team. I want you to be national grade, if not better. Mark, my name's Susan W. I am 40 years old, a single mum making $100,000 a year, and my house is worth about $910,000. I've got a mortgage that is $700,000. I have a couple of credit cards, NAB 5.5, ANZ 10,000, and I often feel like I'm sinking. Do you have any suggestions how I can implement or reduce my debt and gradually get on top of my finances? Okay, so a couple of things. Definitely, Susan. I would say there's about 200 grand worth of equity in the house. I would definitely go back to your mortgage, the lender, whoever that might be, Westpac, whatever, and ask them to consolidate the debt of the credit cards. Because between 10 and 5.5 grand with NAB, that's 15,500. Let's just say it's about 17%. That means every single year you're losing about 4 grand in interest, nearly $4,000. That's a lot. And let's be clear, Susan, it's not $4,000. It's 7 grand before you pay tax. So out of your $100,000, you've essentially lost 7,000. You're back to 93 as a gross position. It's not healthy. So it makes sense. Put it under the one umbrella. Go to the bank with your mortgagee and say, "Hey, listen, consolidate this debt for me." And that's just a smarter way of rolling. You'll just be better off for the exercise. And stick around, Susan. Over the next coming weeks, we'll talk about how you need to bump your revenue, how we can start to work on the side of your job, side hustle, whether it be property, whether it be otherwise, start to earn some money on the side of your current position as well. Very important. Zach. Mark, I'm 20 years old, just finished my apprenticeship and now earning good money as a tradie. I'm paid off my car, but still live at home. Starting my property portfolio is my goal. What budgeting steps can you suggest for someone my age? Yeah, good, Zach. Good question. Mate, as a tradie these days, I'm going to say you're earning very good money. Living at home, really smart, dude. I don't care what your mates might say, the criticism, ridicule, fuck that. This is about getting ahead. I would say to you, mate, just be very conscious that you need a savings account and you're good at keeping records of it. So when you go to ANZ or NAB in the future, you say, listen, I've got this, but I need that. Make sure that you are very clear that it's all sitting there. In terms of starting your property portfolio, stick around. You don't have to go there and save 280 grand as a deposit. There are other ways of getting in. But I would suggest this to you as well. Be diligent with your saving. I was not a good saver, and neither were my parents, mate. They were so frivolous. It was never a good model. But over time, I became responsible with money. Today, I can honestly say that I have a very good management of money and temptation. When you've got plenty of money, you can buy shit. I still set goals now and say I'm not getting that until such time I've achieved or accomplished that. So just keep a good track record of your savings, mate, and be very, very diligent, as I said. If you're a tradie now, you've got to be earning at least 90 as a newfound tradie. It's going to be 90, maybe 100 grand, depending what state you live in. That means you should be able to bank at least 35 to 40 grand a year, I would think. 35 living at home. Peter B. Mark, thanks. My wife and I have a property portfolio worth about 2.55 million. We owe about 2.1. Okay. The contract interest rate rises are killing us, and we're worried that we may need to sell some soon to stay afloat. Any suggestions? Well, a couple of things, Peter. I don't know the properties, so I can't really pass comment. I'll be careful what I say, that's not advice. But in a downward slide that we're going to experience, let me make a couple of things clear. The next sort of 12 months are going to be vastly different from the last 2 years, 3 years. I can promise you hand on heart that we are in for a really turbulent 24. I mean, it's kind of, we're hearing this all the time, that, banks are in trouble. The federal government knows that we've got some really rough patches ahead. And I think you're going to see a lot of people unloading. There's going to be some fucking great opportunities. If you don't want to get caught in the storm, I would suggest, yes, maybe unload something now. If you want to cash up, you don't have a whole lot of equity. What I would say to you though is that interest rates aren't going to go too much further. In a downward market, just like the GFC, I think that you and I are entering a season of similarities. The GFC was pretty serious. I think what lays ahead of us is significant also. But remember, when there's uncertainty in a market, rents actually go up. So there's uncertainty as you know, as an environment, people clutch for certainty, which means they will sign a 12-month lease, a 24-month lease. They will pay more. They will lock in a lease. And this was true of the GFC. Property I had in Sydney went up there 30% because people were so shit scared they lost their job, they had nowhere to live. And they were coming to me, property managers, and sort of saying, tell him I'll sign a 2-year lease. That's unheard of. That's unprecedented. So don't be concerned. Interest rates are very, very close to peaking. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of movement. I think the federal government's kind of shitting themselves. Inflation's still out of control. They tell us it's at 4 or 5%. That's absolute nonsense. It's somewhere between 7 and 8%. And it was double digits early in the year. We were tracking behind New Zealand. They were 10.9%. We were somewhere close. So I'm going to suggest that, yes, they're going to ease interest rates. They're going to take the pressure off banks, and they'll need to, because I think there'll be so many mortgagee sales, they would have a real dire effect on values. To say that simply, you can hold knowing that rents will go up and interest rates will level or come back. So I'll leave that for you to decide, but they're the variables. Jared, Mark, I'm getting an $18,000 windfall. A bit concerned about my existing spending habits. How do I best utilise it? So what is a windfall? I'm only guessing that you're maybe earning more from your portfolio than you need. 18,000 of positive cash flow. I don't know. How would you best utilise it? Jared, I would just say, listen, for now, I think the season's upon us. We're starting to see some turbulence already. I would say save. Mate, don't do anything with it. I would just say squirrel it away for a rainy day. You probably want to be able to sit on at least $150,000 if possible between here and next March, Q1 of 24. I think there's some real serious cracks starting to appear, and I'll make no bones about it. I think there's an opportune time ahead of you and I. So at 18,000, mate, squirrel it away, be smart, be sensible with it. Lucas C. Mark, how do you manage to successfully balance time between family and business? Lucas, I've been pretty fortunate, man. You know, like I've really worked hard those earlier years. I certainly had a very specific and clear plan. To balance time between family and business, I think it's, mate, there's no such thing as fucking balance. I hate that word. I will say this, it's a constant juggle. You know, family is first and foremost. And as I started out by opening this piece, I said to you, question the authority around money. If you think that you should step out of the system and live an alternative life, that's a conscious choice to make. For me, if I had to choose between family or business, it's always going to be family. You know, I've had the blessing of being very good at business and being able to execute that fairly quickly, fairly properly. So I would say to you, be clear about your values. I can't tell you what to do. I'll just maybe template mine. My values have always been family first. But I do believe that you and I can apply intelligence to magnify our effect in the financial realm. I don't see a lot of sense and intelligence in working 50, 100 hours a week if I can have a team that knows what they're doing. And you will learn those skills if you stick around over these next coming months, you will. My suggestion is make that business fucking hum. If you had to make that business work to save your wife, partner, husband from cancer, you'd find a way. If it meant you only had 15 hours a week, you would find a way. If I adopt that very ethos from the beginning, then business can survive without me. And that's a real business. You should never be enslaved by an enterprise or a business at all. The idea of getting into business was to free you of the shackles of the boss or a job. So I don't know why we sort of have this idea, I'm going to smash out 100 hours a week. We really shouldn't adopt that at all. And I've seen a lot of people in my circles, particularly through our seminars, that have run cafes and have worked literally 90, 100 hours a week to make it work. And it blows my mind. There's got to be a way of leveraging it. And what I find is that we don't seem to plug in to those people around us. We just don't get that. We're sort of in our lane. I do coffee, I do muffins, and I open up at 5:15 because when the tradies start knocking. How can I leverage that to really maximize my profit and to reduce my commitment, my risk, and also offer up some lifestyle time? If those ideas, those forces are at play in your mind, you'll work it out, my friend. But follow the fucking smart ones. Don't just sit around the pub on Friday. Really plug into those that have walked that path before. That's all I've ever done in business, man. I sit with very wealthy people, like my friend the other day, 450 mil. Tell me about that, Adam. Like, how does that fucking work? What gave the idea? How'd you expand that? Like, how did you develop a team, that layer of management that looked at all those business units and said, this is the one that makes you the most money? You're not an accountant. Like, I'm asking them these questions, right? Get around smart people, my friend. Nate. What if I made the realization already? I downsized to a caravan and we homeschool the kids. I have started property and now want to go to the next level, starting from nothing. Where do I begin? It's a good question. So if you're going to be at home, so downsize a caravan. Okay, so I think it's hypothetically. So if you're now in a caravan or living alternative life, and I'm going to homeschool the kids, great. I'm going to start in property. I would say start in land estates because they're very rapid. You can turn over money very quickly. By the time you've got the deal and the DA, 4, 8, 9 months may have lapsed. But for you to actually bring those blocks of land to market is only 15, 16 weeks, rather than building, which takes you 28, 35, 40 weeks. So if you're saying to me, Mark, what do I need to do to get started? How do we get to the next level? I would say land estates and start small, mate. 3, 4, 9 blocks of land at a time. You're going to make about 150 grand per block per time you do it. And that's a good profit. Starting from nothing, where do I begin? Again, maybe rub shoulders with the greats. Go shout some developers a cup of coffee. Rub shoulders. How did you get started? What did you do? What were the pitfalls? What were the choke points? They're all the questions I've ever raised, man. And I've sat down with some people that have been really cool over the time. One guy's no longer with us, sadly, but he was a funny bastard. And he would have been probably early 60s, and I would have been probably maybe 32, 34. And I was really getting some momentum in my land estate business. We were sort of turning over 250, 280 blocks a year, which is not bad. And I'd sit with him, and this old guy was so funny because he had liver problems. He had to go to dialysis twice a week. And he'd park in the loading zone at the front of the cafe, and every fucking time he'd sit for breakfast, the parking officer would come past and give him a ticket. He goes, mate, compared to Sydney, it's fucking cheap. And it just didn't make me but he had so much money, it didn't matter. And he always had a different car, and I used to just push this guy, squeeze him. So Daryl, how did that happen? What happened when this? Oh, the fuckers made me put in this bloody open culvert drain, Mark, and it cost me an extra 800 grand. How'd you get that? How'd you recoup that? Well, I went back to the council and said, well, listen, fuck you. If you're going to do that, I want 4 duplex blocks. Maybe like, well, okay. He goes, otherwise I'll hand you the whole thing and you solve it. And this is how we used to work. And these were some of the skills that I picked up. And mate, you just got to get around people that have already got the results you have. I've got coffee next week with a fellow, interestingly enough, here today. I had a PA, and we often have downloads. And the phone rang. And oddly enough, it's a fellow that knows of me. I know of him through another colleague, but I don't know this particular guy well. And he's going, I've got 2,100 blocks. And immediately I'm on ding ding. And I said to my PA, I said, this is going to be a while. And he's a fellow that's very, very, very cashed up. And I know of his friend, his colleague. And his colleague's got about 16,000, 17,000 blocks in his land bank. And he's a pretty major guy, he's a billionaire. And I get along really well with him. We catch up frequently. And this fellow, Matt, is a friend of this guy. And I'm sitting there today, and I'm pumping for information. I said, so how did the DA work on that one? That latitude thing? He goes, oh, it was a nightmare. I said, how did you deal with all that stormwater? I did this, this, and this, and this. So even when you get smart, you're still pumping other people for information, and likewise, vice versa. But I knew that development was very tricky. I had looked at that. But given the slope and the gradient of the site, it was just going to be a nightmare in terms of solving, cross-flow overpath of water. And here he is. He's divulging the solution today. In summary, Nate, never stop learning. I've got a name here, Seymour. So C-M-O-O-R-E, Seymour. We have a fair number of properties already, most positively geared. When is enough properties? How do I sell them off without paying too much CGT? That's a great question. I like that. So, Seymour, very, very simple. You should have a spreadsheet now, a cash flow analysis of what that portfolio is spinning off every single year, net cash flow. After debt amortization, after tax, after all costs, land rates, insurance, landlord insurance, etc. You should have a sum of cash, and this should be well known to you, if you're saying you've got quite a few properties there and they're positive geared, you should have a surplus every single year. Now that should, in fact, be double if it's enough, and enough's a very open-ended question. But that should be at least double what your living expenses are. So if you and your husband spend 150 a year comfortably, you're not doing too much, you should probably want to earn about 300,000 a year net after all expenses and outgoings, would be my answer to that question. But then, you shouldn't really sort of stop the game either. I've tried semi-retirement. That's not real good. You're not drinking a whole lot. It's not good for your liver, not good for your health. How do I sell them off without paying too much CGT? There are ways of doing that. The sensible way to say this on record is to keep them longer. Don't sell them fast. If you bought a property 4 or 5 years ago, you're going to get pummeled with CGT. CGT was invented in 1996 so that people just buy off the plan, sell tomorrow, and pay no tax and support the system. They were literally able to pay nothing in tax, and their kids are going to schools using the same roads as us. So CGT was introduced to say we need to gouge them for something. The longer you keep it, typically a 15-year window, the CGT has a long down to zero. So if you keep 15 years, you don't have to avoid it. You can just pay zero or literally nil. Robert T. Mark, how can I buy my first investment property? If I can borrow 100 grand, maybe more on top of my current mortgage, use this to reinvest. Robert, look, a couple of things. So you've got a current mortgage, and you've probably got about 100 grand worth of room in there. I probably wouldn't at this point in time, my friend. 100 grand's not enough. If you were to, look, and this is not going to sound, I'm not being silly when I say this, I'd invest in you, man. If you sort of got 100 grand, but it's not enough to get into a property, I'd go back and invest in me and education. I'd just say, righto, what do I need to do? How to become a pro? How do I get good at this sport? But right now, I don't think the cycle is sufficiently buoyant enough where you would dive back into another property. I don't even know if I believe the 6 o'clock news and they say Sydney market is still rising. I'm not believe that. I really don't. Money on money, I don't think the Sydney market's moving at 2.5% a month that they claim. If anything, I see the mid to lower end being the safest, and the top end is just going absolutely crazy. It's going down, if anything. I don't think it's increasing at all. And when they talk about 77, 78% clearance rates at auctions, statistics can be bent, and I'm pretty sure they are in Sydney. So I would stay out of the market for the moment. I really would. I'd get smart, I'd get savvy, sophisticated, and have the chamber loaded with bullets come the first quarter of next year, because there's going to be some good deals to be had. So that's 6:49. I've got to do this well. You got any other thoughts? No, I've got to do my job this evening. I was very, very poor on Wednesday night, apparently I got in trouble. So, firstly, thank you very much for your time, everybody, and I hope that you've received immense value. I do say to you, punch heaps of questions through the team. We've got a live responder. If you feel the need through the week, you can always hit our website, and there's a live responder. You can leave questions, and I will literally audio you back. So my suggestion is, if you want engagement, you want some answers to your woes, I'm more than happy to help. Please leave your number one takeaway from tonight's training. Please comment, tag that, leave as number one. Hey, listen, this was my takeaway. Well, this is the thing that made the most sense. I appreciate you exploring that topic, Mark. That added some knowledge to it. Well, this really shed some light on the topic. The next training we're going to be doing is next Wednesday. I do encourage you to be consistent with the training. It will have a stacking effect. There is no doubt that if you and I read a book, we forget it. If we continue to read, we remember it. So over the next coming weeks and months, I say to you, ply in. If you don't have that knowledge, this is literally going to you for free. There is no gain to me. This is you benefiting from my experiences. Why the hell would you be so noble? Pretty simple, folks. I think that when you've got a lot of money, you need to be very careful about what you have and what you give. I think those two subjects are related. So hence the reason I think it's important to give back. We have a growth summit coming up. If you want to make some inquiries, feel free to do so. Many of you are inquiring about what do I need to do? How do I get started? By all means, hit the team, ask them some questions. Anyone that shares their live training in their Facebook feed will go to the draw to get a one-on-one coaching session with me, pro bono, free. So hit that live training feed on Facebook, you know what to do. And the mission behind this, many people have asked, why are you back in the focus? Why are you back in the lens? And it's pretty simple. I think that we all need purpose. And it's fair to say that for the last sort of 18 months, not much has really happened. You know, I've been out there charging, we've had a rental crisis, my portfolio has exploded. But as a person, I really don't think that I've grown as an individual. So you're asking me why? Why would you come back? Why would you go back into all this world? I do feel it's important you and I give. I have a heart for giving. So I want you to realise that, you know, when I say this is a legacy piece, this is actually seeing you progress, push forward, and really own the space of money. Because my God, it's a great life when you're free. So thank you, good night, God bless, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Enjoy.